Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. I'm sure more will filter in as we get going. Today, we're chatting about board and committee management with MBNCanada. Myself, I'm Logan Guest. I'm our sales and marketing manager. I've been with the organization for 6.5 years now. Spend a lot of time working with clients and partners on our Extranet User Manager product. And a large trend has kind of emerged around these board and committee type portals. So I'm excited to be part of the presentation today. Just for some quick Teams etiquette, this is a regular Teams meeting. So as people join, if you're on webcam, you'll be viewable to everyone else. The chat will be open through the webinar. A couple team members are here to field questions and comments. I know Peter likes it to be interactive, so feel free to chat and take part. And most importantly, enjoy the content and hopefully you learn a thing or two.
Thanks, Logan. Peter Carson here, the clean-shaven version of me up on the screen. It's winter time now. So President, Founder, Chief Bottle Washer of Envision IT and Extranet User Manager, also 12-time Office Apps and Services, Microsoft MVP. Kind of excited over the last 6 months or so. We've seen conferences coming back to the physical world and getting out there and speaking and doing things like that. So excited about that. But obviously online and webinar works well as well. So welcome everybody from that point of view. And we also have Meighan Finlay from MBNCanada. Meighan, if you want to do a quick intro on your side.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Meighan Finlay. I'm the Executive Director of MBNCanada, which is the Municipal Benchmarking Network of Canada. I've been there for 4 years, and prior to that was involved in municipal service delivery, continuous improvement administration.
Thanks, Meighan.
So just for some quick background for folks that are new, you'll see throughout Envision IT, we really have 2 different brands. It's ultimately one company. Envision IT focuses on everything Microsoft 365 collaboration, so lots of Teams, lots of SharePoint work. And through that, we've built a number of extranet-based solutions. As the kind of roadmap develops, we actually built the Extranet User Manager product suite, very focused on the kind of identity and access management, user management side of things. And then since then, we've really bloomed out into, different sorts of data portal, document collaboration sharing. Peter's going to touch on to that as far as the product goes. Big line items for us. I mean, obviously, with Canadian data centers coming in for ourselves, supporting Microsoft 365, it's starting in 2014, moving to support Azure B2B in 2016 was a really big deal. That was when things transitioned so that you could actually invite users with their own credentials into your Microsoft 365 without licensing them. Since then we've had multiple versions of the product launch from there. And then, the most recent launch was the platform in 2022, where User Manager was joined by a couple other products, and part of those MBN's leveraging in their portal. As far as customers go, well over 100 customers deployed globally. Very fortunate. The way that the product suite works and is deployed is it's not really industry specific. We get to work with all different types of organizations, whether it be supporting their customers, partners, vendors, volunteers, anybody external to the organization. And in MBNCanada's case, it's other municipalities and users from those municipalities. So I'll hand it over to Peter to dive more into the boards and committee solution, as well as Meighan. Thank you.
Thanks, Logan. Yeah, so a quick summary of agenda of what we're going to cover off today. We may not need the whole hour, but we actually have a fair bit of content to go through here. It's going to be a mix of presentation deck as well as live demo, primarily in the development version of MBN's portal. So we've got a number of new features that we've got in there, and it's nice and anonymized. We've got made up people in there, so we're not exposing anything from a privacy point of view. So we're going to go through sort of some background on general challenges around board and committee management, how you could leverage Microsoft 365 independent of our product from a board management point of view, and then getting into the specifics of the MBNCanada solution and using that sort of as a context of how we built that out and what that looks like. Plus some broader sample scenarios and even demo scenarios that you can try out yourself after the session. So the goals for the session itself, we're in a Teams meeting here today. We've all been, going through COVID for the last number of years and kind of gotten used to webcams and sharing screens and doing online meetings. And the reality is that going forward, that's going to be a big part of sessions. They're going to be either all in person, and that's probably going to be the exception rather than the norm for a lot of organizations going forward. They may be hybrid, where there's a combination of in-person and online, and there's going to be fully online sessions like the one we're doing here today. And we're really focused on using Microsoft Teams as the hub for that. One of the challenges you often find with not just Teams, but the whole Microsoft 365 stack is that, it's got a ton of functionality in there, but it's kind of overwhelming, particularly if people aren't familiar with it. So we're going to talk about our Extranet User Manager product, and particularly the portal side of that product, and how it simplifies the experience, not just for the board members that are going to be coming in, but for the owners of those boards as well, just making it super simple for them to be able to come in, authenticate, get access to what they need from that point of view. So the committee members themselves, they can get all the meeting info, archives of past meetings, member directories, everything that they need to be effective as a board or committee member. Ultimately, all those meeting documents, which are sort of the key of it, the agendas prior to the meeting, any supporting documents, recordings and minutes that come out from the meetings, we're going to be using SharePoint Online as the repository for that. And the committee organizers basically create meeting packages and store them in SharePoint Online for the members to be able to access. And then, going beyond that, saying, hey, setting up net new committees itself, what's the process around that? So sort of general context on board and committees as a whole, they can take all sorts of different shapes and sizes from that point of view. I would say that the organizations that we work with typically have a larger number of committees and members. A solution like ours would be overkill for a single board of directors portal that had 12 people that came into it. You probably don't need what we're doing here, and it may be not cost effective from that point of view. But organizations like MBNCanada, Electricity Canada, others that we work with, where they've got large organizations that are members and large numbers of people coming in from that. And they may have anywhere from, in MBN's case, close to 40 different panels and committees. Electricity Canada, they're up closer to the 100 mark, I think, and potentially thousands of members of those committees. You really need some automation and some process around managing those. Now, typically we see users external to the organization as members to the committees. They're generally not within the organization itself. So how do you interact with those people that are outside of your organizations? There's typically some sort of rhythm. There's monthly, quarterly, annual schedules. From that point of view, a lot of the panels that we're talking about with MBNCanada meet 2 or 3 times a year. So there's sort of a predictable recurring basis to that. And there's effort that needs to happen in terms of preparing for those meetings, getting the packages together, and then making sure board members have easy access to that. In the past, days I've been in the industry long enough, I remember, but board binders and things like that, you would physically print out a package and put it into a binder and FedEx it to each of the members. Thankfully those days are gone, but putting a big email attachment together is still not the best way to manage that. Ideally some sort of web portal or mobile app is the way to go from that point of view. So if we think about challenges around board and committee, the first and foremost is just, if it is going to be an online technological experience, what's the abilities of the people that are joining those committees? Demographics are all over the map. In fact, as you get into board of directors, it's often senior or even post-career people that are retired, and do they have the comfort with the new technology and be able to do things from that point of view? The package creation process itself can be quite onerous. Some of these committee or board packages can be very involved. We think about, maybe not for our solution, but we work with a lot of municipalities directly ourselves, and things like committee packages for council. Those are very involved processes. There's lots of people that need to approve and sign off on those as they put together. So how formal is that process? Like I said, email attachments are not ideal, not least of which is often the packages are too big just to email. You get into 20 meg limits on attachments and things start bouncing back. It's not the right way to do it. Never mind the fact that, a lot of people's inboxes aren't different than mine, where they're just overwhelmed. We've got, I have literally hundreds of thousands of items in my inbox and stuff gets lost in there. It's this big black hole. So having one place that I consistently go to that has all the information that I need from that point of view, if I was a committee member, that'd be very important to me. And as we said before, the members themselves may not use Microsoft 365 themselves, and they may be overwhelmed with the complexity and the options available to them. So how do we strip that back and make it as lean as possible? And obviously, it's not just preparing for the meeting, but it's the follow-up from the meeting. We're recording this session. We're going to publish it up on our website, so folks that weren't able to attend the webinar live will be able to view it. The same can be true that a board or committee member wants to go back and review. And there's some cool things we'll talk about, like Stream on SharePoint, where you can actually see a transcript of the meeting. You can search through that, go to particular points. If there's debate around, I thought we decided this. No, we decided that. Okay, well, let's go back and check, see the transcript and see the recording and have that validation. Microsoft 365 is great for providing a lot of that functionality for you. So, these are questions that we would ask an organization as we're working with to sort of understand their board and committee structure. What does that look like? How many board and committees are there? How many members across those? Are those members internal or external to the organization? You may not know their comfort level with the technology, but you may have a sense of what your audience looks like from that point of view. Number 5 is sort of a misnomer. Are they licensed for Microsoft 365? The reality is, if they're external to your organization, they don't actually need to be licensed. So, let's just take that one off the table, but it's good to talk to because people often get confused around the licensing side of things. Do you have a spot that you keep your board member details? Is there formal publication of it on the website? How do you organize things from that point of view? And then what's your package assembly process look like? How many levels of sign off and approval are there? What do you need to go through from that point of view? And then ultimately, when you have that package ready, today, how do you share that out with your members, and how do they access those documents? Is there expiration? Is there sensitivity, encryption, security, all those sorts of things around them? So just things to think about, sort of talking points as we're looking at a board solution for an organization. And then coming back to the Microsoft 365 side of things. So Teams and SharePoint are obviously a big part of the solution. Teams are going to be what you typically run any sort of online meeting through. Now, having said that, our solution is flexible. We can bring in external if organizationally you've said, hey, we use Microsoft 365, but we've actually standardized on Zoom for meetings. Not sure why you'd want to do that because it's sort of a weird hybrid there, but we could support that from that point of view. But the main goal is, hey, let's use Teams from an online meetings point of view, and let's use SharePoint as a place to support, to provide all the supporting documents, not just specific to the meetings, but about the panel and about the organization as a whole that you need to share back to the members. But then we're going to be showing you our RE1 portal that sits on top of that. And that's really what strips away that complexity and gives you something very simple, either as a committee owner or as a committee member. And then, the actual calendar invitations, so it's going to be managed through Exchange. Outlook does a great job of doing calendar management from that point of view. We have some committee reports that we're going to be showing you that we surface up through another Microsoft technology called Power BI. I mentioned Stream on SharePoint, so if you're recording sessions, they get stored in SharePoint. The transcription service actually does it live. I think it's transcribing as I'm talking here right now. Sometimes amusing to see how it transcribes, but it's actually gotten pretty good from that point of view. And then you may have task management and outcomes coming out of your committees, and Planner's a cool tool you may opt in to use as part of that from that perspective. Okay, so let's talk about a single committee structure and how we've laid this out. This is what we call an information architecture. It's the structure of how we want to organize things around a committee. So typically what we'll do is we'll create a committee site or a committee team for each committee in Microsoft 365 in your tenant. So all this is stored in your tenant. We're not asking you to keep any data with us. We are a SaaS solution, but it's important for us that all of your content lives in your tenant with Microsoft. And every team site in Microsoft 365 has a documents library in it, and typically a general folder in there. From a Teams point of view, you're going to break it into a number of folders. So there's going to be sort of high-level governance documents that you want to keep. What's the expectation as a committee members? What's the policies and rules and procedures around that? That may be specific to the committee. In MBN's case, we actually moved this governance piece up into its own top level, so it can be shared common across all of the committees and panels, all 40 of them, so we don't have to duplicate it in each one through there. There's obviously documents relevant to the meeting itself, and we're going to dive a bit more into the technology. We use a concept called a document set. Think of it as a folder that you can attach metadata to. So when is the meeting? Is it online? What's the join URL? All that gets attached to this folder, and then you drop all the documents that you want in for your meeting. And all this complexity that I'm showing you here is kind of hidden from the committee members, so they don't need to worry about the moving parts under the hood. They see the simple from that point of view. And then you may have a collaborative area where you actually want committee members to be able to collaborate, not related to a specific meeting, but again, just sort of broader. You know, there's a cool concept in Microsoft 365 called co-authoring. So you can have things like Word documents and Excels and PowerPoints in these folders here, and allow the committee members to actually edit and contribute and collaborate live on those documents. You know, you typically would provide read-only access into here because you don't want the members actually updating the agenda or the minutes. You want controls around that. This is more of a sort of a working area from that perspective. So Meighan, why don't I flip it over to you? Let's get a little background, you know, as an organization about MBNCanada. Sorry, Meighan, you're on mute there.
Sorry, I always forget to unmute. I don't know how many of these I do a year, and I never remember to push the button. So MBNCanada is a municipal benchmarking network of Canada. We've been around since 2004. We are a not-for-profit association. We support municipal performance management through data collaboration, data collection, reporting, and networking. We currently have indicators for municipal service delivery around 300 across 36 service areas. We collect data on an annual cycle, and we do create reports and make the data available for our participating municipalities, our board members, and the general public. We do have a public report that we also release. That's a little bit about background. What we did find, though, in the last several years is that, like everything else, the data warehouse that we had before, which was created in 2004, was somewhat antiquated. It didn't support real-time data collection. Exporting data was very difficult. And the other piece that we really do promote with our organization is not just the data collection, but it's the ability to provide a place for municipal peers to collaborate with one another, to network, to share information on an ongoing basis. And as Peter mentioned, we have what we would call about 1,000 users across the different municipalities that participate. And in those users, we've sort of organized them by service areas. So we have roughly what we call 36 expert panels or service area panels, but we also have standing committees, including our board. So we were looking at modernizing both the data portal or the data warehouse, and also looking to modernize the way we collaborate or support collaboration, particularly as we move forward in the sort of digital world and virtual world. And given that our members are almost all external members, it's a way to support that collaboration all across Canada. So we have, you know, municipalities in the east, the west, a lot of municipalities in Ontario. So being able to modernize the warehouse so that these 1,000 users can actually have one-stop shopping to both the data collection component as well as the collaboration component was essential for us in moving forward and supporting our municipal participants. Again, I think one other dynamic that's important for us is that we have users at very different levels within the municipality. So some consumers of the data are not necessarily the people who'd be entering the data. The people that are at the table to do networking and knowledge exchange might be frontline providers, whereas those that are looking at data analysis and reporting might be within your performance management portfolio. So it was important for us to be able to build multi-leveled security access so that people, when they logged in, would get access to the areas that were most important for them, and areas in which they had permissions, and in areas that really made that were most relevant in terms of their networking abilities. So we reached out, and Envision IT was selected to work with us to help build this new data and collaboration portal, our one-stop shop for operations and municipal collaboration.
Thanks, Meighan. So just a couple questions for you from a context point of view. So we did a sort of a review and recommendations engagement late 2021, early 2022. It was around February, March, wasn't it, that we actually kicked off the implementation project of actually building this new portal.
Yes, we did start that in February of this year, or last year, February 2022. Yeah, and we're hoping we'll finally be completely implemented within the next couple of weeks and getting it up and running. We did have the additional challenge, Peter, if I recall, when we were doing this, was building this new networking and data portal and data warehouse while still maintaining some of the existing structure so that we could support ongoing collaboration networking while we were building out this new portal. So it's been a very staged approach so that we can maintain operations and that networking component.
Yeah, I mean, we actually launched the portal in May of 2022 to start the data collection, because that's when you sort of open it up for municipalities to collect data. And it was very much a just-in-time software project where we kind of launching features as you needed it through the spring, summer, and early fall, because you've got a deadline. It's sort of end of September, early October to prepare your annual report, correct?
That's correct. And one thing I failed to mention is that during this time, we had actually worked to build out an MS Teams site in SharePoint in 2020, I believe. And so, we did notice that one of the issues with the Teams, the way we had it was, again, having people go to multiple places in order to do collaboration, one place, data collection, another place. So in this modernization, we were looking to build an easier access to both collaboration and data collection without having to go to different programs and different sign-ins. So that was also a challenge for us as well.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, what we're doing right now, I mean, the portal that I'm going to be showing in a minute here is really the development version of what we're building for the upcoming year. There's lots of lessons learned as we went through that exercise of launching the project out and working with the municipal partners through last year, getting feedback, things that we already knew, that we said, hey, we have to launch a minimum viable product. Let's get this out and know that we want to add this later. So kind of excited to get this all pulled together and get the updated version out there over the next week or two.
And then the last bullet on that slide too, which I don't want to forget mentioning, is the fact that we do want municipalities to be able to do their own administration in terms of setting up who are their users, what kinds of security accesses do they have, what panel access do they have. So this is sort of a blended model where we have administrative oversight from a program office perspective, but the municipalities are very much in control of their users, which is also a very valuable approach.
Which is a great point, thank you. I mean, delegation is a big model that we support from a product point of view to say, hey, how do we empower, those external people to actually manage their own panels, their own municipalities and such as part of that. So I've got a number of slides here of sort of screenshots of the solution itself. I'm actually not going to go through these. I'm going to keep them on another monitor, just sort of guide my demo through, and I'm actually going to take you through a live session on the development site itself. So here, let me just flip this over to a different screen. And pull that back. Okay, so I'm on portaldev.mbncanada.ca. So this is not the live site. This is our development version of it. And this is the sort of front opening page as a non-authenticated user to the MBN Canada portal. And we often support self-registration and discovery and such, but typically not in these board and committee type of scenarios. You don't have random people saying, I want to sign up and join this committee. You may have that scenario, but typically you've got somebody that owns and manages who that membership is. We've kept it as a private invitation-only portal. You need your email address to sign in. Now I'm in a browser session that's already signed into my Microsoft 365. It happens to be the same one that the portal is actually in, but the typical scenario is that I would belong to my own organization coming into the portal from there. It remembers my email address. I would normally type that in the first time I come in, click the remember me, and go continue from there. And if I wasn't already signed in my browser, it would take me to a Microsoft login form, let me continue the login, and then back into the portal from here. So again, the idea is to keep it very simple. All I need to remember is my email address. In fact, I don't need to remember a password for this portal site because it's my own organization's password. It's very simple from that point of view. And if I don't have an organizational Microsoft 365 account, it'll do what's called a one-time passcode. It'll send you an email with a code that's time expiring. You use that, you sign in from there. What we found actually was with the 13 member municipalities, all of them were actually on Microsoft 365 themselves as well. So it worked really well. That, you know, if I belong to the city of Sudbury, you know, my sudbury.ca email address was actually a Microsoft 365 email address. And I just come into the portal using that account, and I don't need to remember an additional credential as part of that. So it keeps it quite simple from that perspective. So let's jump right into one of the committees. There's, as I mentioned, close to 40 different committees. I've signed in this account that I'm a member of is just a member of a couple of different panels and committees. So we've got the top level board of directors. We've got the municipal leads group. The municipal leads are the folks at each of the municipalities that are kind of the keepers of who comes into the portal. So they have their own panel for them to collaborate across municipalities. We have the different service areas like the accounts payable expert panel. In fact, if I come to the data dictionary, you can see, you know, all the various different service areas that MBNCanada collects data on. Each of these service areas, for the most part, has its own dedicated panel. There's a few that have been combined, like there's a waste management or a wastewater and a water. I think they meet as a combined panel because they're closely related to each other. But for the most part, it's across all of those. So as each person signs in, they see what panels and committees they belong to, and they can dive into those from there. And in this scenario, as Meighan mentioned, you know, there's a municipal lead from each organization that defines who the members are. So if I go into the Sudbury municipal group, you know, I can see all the other members from Sudbury. These are all made up email addresses for the most part that belong to this. And if I'm a municipal lead, there's actually a big Excel that they use to map and say, okay, who has access to which service areas and belongs to which panels. The municipal lead is kind of the keeper of that, which really helps Meighan and Patty, Meighan's coworker, organize things. Like they don't know the 100-odd people from Sudbury that should be in which areas from there. It's really the municipal leads that knows that best. So being able to delegate that down works really well from that perspective. So if I come to the accounts payable expert panel, it's just the first service area. We decided to use that as our demo scenario, and I can go into the group. So this page here is really the landing page for the committee or for the panel. So it should have everything that I need to know as a committee member about that. So, I mean, what panel am I in? Is there an email contact for the panel as a whole? Like if I've got questions related to the panel, who sort of owns it, that I can reach out to around that. And then we've got a lot of different documents organized in here. So what happens here? We've got what are called measure documents. These are things that are specific to this particular service area. So they're not related to a particular meeting, but they are very much so related to this particular panel. And they are read-only documents, so they're basically reference documents for the panel members to be able to look at. And actually, I mentioned a lot of the governance documents we actually put up in a resources area here to say, hey, you know, here's the general information page for things that you need to know as a team member itself. And we're still fleshing out the content as we get ready for launch on that side. And then this spot here, the collaboration spot, is actually a working area. So all of these members that belong to this committee, in general, have read-only access to all the stuff that's in here. But this particular folder here, they can actually edit and collaborate on documents in there. So if it's a Word document or Excel, you know, it's hard to see on the bottom of my screen there, but it's actually launching over into SharePoint Online and bringing up Word Online, Excel Online. So they don't actually need Word or Excel installed on their system. They can actually interact with those documents. If they had edit access, which they do in this area, they can put their updates in there. They can mention other committee members to say, hey, can you give me some guidance or input or a decision on this spot here? And that becomes the collaboration space. So that's sort of on the left side of the committee page. This center page is kind of the meat of the meetings itself. So we see upcoming and past meetings here. So I can see a couple demo ones that I've created in here, some past ones in here. And I also have a roll up without having to go into each meeting individually of all the past meeting minutes. So if I want to see, you know, what was decided, what were the outcomes from prior meetings, I've got that all available to me here. Or I could go into an individual meeting to see the details around that meeting. So again, I see the meeting agenda. If I had meeting minutes, recording, etc., I would see all that in the meeting documents here. This one's actually scheduled for right now. You know, if I hit that join meeting, I won't do that because I'll leave this Teams meeting. It'll actually take me into the Teams meeting for that meeting through there. And the things that we see on the right-hand side here are not specific to this particular meeting, but we provide them here, just like we did on the committee page, just for reference purposes. So when they're in here, they kind of have a one-stop shop for everything, you know, from a reference documents point of view. Also quite important just to be able to quickly get to the minutes from whatever the previous meeting was, because that's often, you know, the opening of the meeting is to review and accept the minutes and move forward from there from a perspective. I'm just going to flip through my PowerPoint to make sure I'm tracking my flow through here. So in this scenario right now, I'm signed in not just as a committee member, but actually as a committee owner. So I get to decide who's in the committee, although that in this case is done in a slightly different process. But I also get to create new meetings, upload documents, and manage processes around that. So let's actually go through the process of creating another demo meeting through here. So I click this new meeting link here. The first time I do that, sign in as a member, it's actually going to bring up a Microsoft consent form, because as a meeting organizer, what's going to happen when I go through this process is actually going to create the meeting in my mailbox in my Microsoft 365. So it's just like any other regular meeting, but it's going to capture details from that, like what's the Teams URL and such, and embed it in the system so it gets published up easily. We wanted to make it really simple for people to do all the things that need to happen in terms of getting organized for a meeting. So we'll call this creatively demo 3. Put it, say, on the 20th. We could automatically put the meeting date in as part of the summary. You know, we debated how we want to structure that, and that can be done from a different case point of view. So I pick a start. We'll leave it as a noon start in there. Pick an end time on the same day. We'll say it's a lunch hour meeting, so we'll make it 12 to 1, and we'll make it a strictly online meeting. Could be in person, could be hybrid. We'll pick that online scenario. I can put some descriptions and locations in there if I want to. Go ahead and hit the create meeting. So behind the scenes, there's actually a fair bit of complexity that's happening. So it's creating that appointment in my calendar as the meeting organizer. It's creating that document set that we talked about for me to put all the documents into and wiring it all together. So when I hit close on this dialog, all this refreshes. There's my Peter Demo 3 January 20th meeting ready to go. If I click into that, you know, I'll see my standard items here, but there's no meeting documents yet because I haven't done anything there from that point of view. So if I come over to SharePoint Online, and I'm actually in the right spot here on the meeting documents, let me just refresh this page. And you'll see a new folder has been created here called Peter Demo 3. So I can do a couple of things. I can click on that folder, and let's say I wanted to revise when the meeting was happening. I could update the meeting start and end dates through here. I'd still need to go into my calendar and actually move the calendar appointment. So it's sort of two actions that I need to do from that point of view. We didn't want to get too fancy in integrating changes to calendar back into here. We figured we'd keep it simple from that point of view. Maybe I changed my mind and it's now a hybrid. I could flip that over to a hybrid meeting. You know, there's my Teams link. I didn't have to copy it from my Outlook calendar. It already populated it for me. So it's good from that point of view. And let's say we're doing the meeting in Dundas, Ontario, and I want to put some details in there. I can update that meeting location from that point of view. So if I come back to the portal, and let me just refresh this view in here, we can see it's now a hybrid meeting. Actually, just notice we're not displaying the location and some of the other details there. So we got some tweaks we have to do to this page here. But let's say now I'm ready to actually put some documents into there. So I can click into that document set, which is effectively just a folder. And you can see here, I mean, there's a lot of things in SharePoint. There's a lot of complexity in here. And that's why we generally don't want people coming in here. Yes, as a meeting organizer, I better do a couple of things in here. And we probably need a little training video so they know how to do that. But really, you know, all they need to know is, hey, I can go to my local system here, grab a PDF of an agenda, and literally just drop it into that folder. You know, and SharePoint will upload it. There we go. From there, if I come back to my meeting page, you know, I now have my agenda document in there. Committee members can click on that, get into the agenda, and away they go from there. and any supporting documents you need to put in prior to the meeting, or follow on recordings, minutes, whatever else. You just follow the same process. You just drop those files into the SharePoint folder and they magically appear on this page here for all the committee members to be able to consume from there.
Peter, if I just might interject really quickly too,
Sure.
What we have found is the nice part about this is that we no longer have to send the documents, as you mentioned before, in an email, nor do we even update the invite with attachments. We simply say all the documents you need are right there in this spot. So we don't have to do a lot of updates of invites and a lot of notifications to say, go look and see that, the documents are there. When we send the original invite, they just know to go there and check for the documents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, if we come over to my calendar, so you can see there's a new meeting that showed up in my calendar here. Trust me, it wasn't there a minute ago. Set up and ready to go. That's that Peter Demo 3 meeting. And I can come into the edit here. And blow that up a little bit. We've got the Teams meetings links. Actually, notice, I'll have to mention Meighan, who's the PM on this project. The workflow that created this meeting should actually put the link to that portal meeting page right in the meeting as well. So it's very simple. I'm in my calendar. I click that link. Boom, there's all my documents, everything I need for the meeting. And the other thing is, it's not a point in time. They're not attached to this calendar invite and then they got updated later and I'm looking at the wrong versions, because it's a live link to that portal site and it shows you whatever's current from that moment in time from that perspective. So it's great from that point of view. So let's say I've got my meeting already. I want to invite people in and go from there. So I want to invite my attendees. I could just start manually typing in. If I got a big committee, that's probably not a good idea. So I can come back to my portal and back to the panel page. I've got my list of members here. Just let that refresh for me. And I can actually copy them from this interface here and just paste them over into my, I may not want all the attendees, but I can do this, copy all, click that, come over to my calendar, paste that in. And if I want to, I could X a few people out and say, hey, I'm tweaking the attendee a little bit. It's up to me as an organizer as to how I want to structure that. Or maybe for this meeting, I need to invite in guest speakers or other people that aren't part of the committee, but they should be in this particular meeting. Again, it's just regular Outlook. I manage the meeting from there. When I'm happy with that, I just go ahead and send that update. I'm not actually going to send those out. I don't want all those random emails going out, but you get the idea from that point of view. Now, if we come back to that committee page, there's a couple other things here. I can come to this edit group membership link. This will take us into another part of our product called Admin. It's sort of the main console for managing the committees and the groups itself. So it understands, where is the SharePoint site for this particular panel and groups and such related to that. How do people join the group? In this case, they're all invitation only, but also more importantly, who are the members in the group, but also who are the membership managers and the group owners. So we can make somebody what we call a membership manager. They're able to manage who's in the group themselves, and that could be an external person that does that as well. So as Meighan mentioned, it's great to be able to delegate that out externally. In MBN's case, they don't actually use this page because they use that security matrix, we call it, within the municipal portion of the portal, because it's setting up more than just the membership here. It's actually managing the entire security for the portal. But one of the other things that we can do back in the portal, I'm still looking at this spot here. If I just wanted to email the members themselves, I can click that link itself. It'll launch my Outlook or whatever my default mail client is on my local machine and pre-populate it with all the members of the group. And again, I could add or remove people, send a note out, so it's very easy to communicate with those teams. And then the last one we have here is a report that we can generate. Now, full disclosure, this is still a mock-up of the report. We're building that out. We're going to be showing more of the Power BI reporting stuff in the January 31st session, but it's basically a scheduled report that generates this PDF of who are all the members from each of the municipality for this particular expert panel. And we can generate those reports for each panel automatically and just have them available as a PDF from there. We can also spin that around the other way and say, hey, let's generate a report for Calgary that shows Calgary's members across all the panels. So you can sort of look at it from the other perspective as well. Once we've got all the data in there, you can do a lot of interesting things from that point of view. Now that report that I was just showing you, it's actually based off of we call it our Admin Power BI report. So if I come back into the console here, there's a report that lets us see into what's happening in the portal as a whole. We call it our Admin dashboard. Now, it's not just for administrators to use. We've set up security in it. So if I'm a group owner in this report, I would see all the people that belong to my group or my committee, and it trims it down from that point of view. Right now, I'm signed in as an administrator, so I kind of see everything from that point of view. So I can see there's 49 groups in the tenant, 97 users. I mean, this is dev, so it doesn't have the full 1,000 people in there from that point of view. These are actually all groups in the tenant, so it's not just for our solution, it's basically all Azure Active Directory groups. I can filter that down and say I'm only interested in the EUM groups, which represent things like the accounts payable expert panel. So I can click into that particular one, and I can see what activity people have. I've got 17 people that have signed in over the last week, quite a few less in the longer period. We've actually got a bunch of people that have never signed in. Sort of begs the question, should they be a member of that committee? Do we have the wrong person? Do we need to take them out? So it comes into the governance side of things of understanding how people are using the solution. Are they engaging? Are they the right people from that point of view? It also becomes really important from a support perspective because we can actually dive further into this and say, hey, I want to look at those sign-in details. Where in the world are they coming from? They'll happen to be Ontario in this particular scenario here. How successful are they? Is there errors that they're experiencing as part of that? What sort of percentage of sign-ins had problems and what problems did they have? So this is more of a IT support, but actually the group owner can really leverage that. If they have a member that says, hey, I'm having a heck of a time getting in there. I can't figure this out. What sort of problems are they having? What's the failures related to them? What the error? What browser are they coming from? When did that happen? What were they trying to do? There's a lot of detail available if you want to dive into it from that perspective. And then we use the data that's in this report in order to generate things like the committee members report from them. So it's all kind of interconnected from that perspective. And it's all built on top of Microsoft Power BI. Now you might ask, hey, if you're savvy on licensing, do I need a Power BI license to do these reports? How does that work? We actually use our data portal product, which uses a Power BI embedded service from Microsoft, doesn't require end user licensing. So everything that we're showing you here today, you don't need any additional Microsoft 365 licensing above and beyond what you've already got for your staff. Your external users are able to come in and they don't need anything additional for that. And then the last piece actually here in EUM admin as well is, hey, I've got a brand new committee that I'm setting up. What does that look like? Actually, we haven't set it up in MBN. I've got it in my dev tenant here. So if I come over here and say add new group, we have the ability to template groups. So we can have a template for what a committee looks like. Actually, in the MBN scenario, there's two templates. There's one for committees and there's one for panels. Because they're slightly different in terms of how they're configured. So in the MBN case, when we get this fully deployed, there would actually be two cards here, one for committees and one for panels. And basically this ties into our open source Teams provisioning solution that I've talked about in past webinars. We're not going to dive into the details of that, but basically, you click on this, you get a form that comes up that says, hey, what's the name of the committee that you want to create? Go ahead and submit that. And it starts the whole process of creating that. So it'll actually create the Microsoft team, the SharePoint site, all that folder structure that we saw in SharePoint and wired up in our Extranet User Manager product. So it's all connected properly. And basically you've got your new panel or your committee ready to go from there. I mean, it's not a frequent task to create new committees. That doesn't change very often, at best once a year. But it's important to have a standardized process. Say, hey, I don't have a jot note of 20 things that I need to do when I set up a committee and I forget one of them and things just don't work properly. Let's keep it simple from that point of view. So it's actually pretty easy to snapshot a template of what a committee should look like and then provision it through the solution through there. So I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint. So as I mentioned, all those sections that I was going through previously, I mean, they're all available in the PowerPoint deck that we're going to be providing up on our website after the event. So you'll be able to download that and have a look through it. We're actually going to be providing the recording as well, so you can go through that too. But if we flip back, let's take a step back from what does the solution look like to how do I actually implement? What's this going to cost? What does this look like? So sort of three main phases around this. I mean, there's a planning engagement, so we can understand what's your board and committee structure, what's that information architecture going to look like, and there's going to be tweaks, like with the MBN solution where we had, you know, the common governance area, the collaboration area, the meeting minutes area, the panel information section. What does that look like for your organization, and what would a template look like for that? Is it one template? Is it multiple? And structuring that out. So that all happens in the planning phase. In the building phase, you know, we're going to build out those committee teams and sites. We're going to deploy our portal and user manager. Now, from a technical deployment point of view, our Extranet User Manager is now a SaaS product. So we host it, we manage it. So it's not running in Meighan's MBNCanada Microsoft infrastructure. It's actually in a shared infrastructure on our side. But as I mentioned before, we don't actually keep any of that data in our infrastructure. It all lives in the MBNCanada tenant. So it's actually a pretty easy deployment. It's basically connecting our hosted environment to your Microsoft 365 tenant. There's going to be some branding. You want to, like you saw in the MBN scenario, have your brand in there and setting up those groups from there. Now, if it's a complex solution, there's a lot more to the MBN solution than just the boards and committees. We built a whole development environment around that to work in, and then we promote that to production. And what I've been showing today is that development environment. We don't have to do that. We're doing one for Texas AFT right now, which is a teachers federation down in Texas, and we're working right in their production tenant. You know, it sounds maybe not the best idea, but it's actually fine because we're not going to light it up and let anybody know about it until we're ready to roll. And there's very little customization. We're doing some branding, we're deploying an information architecture, and that's it. There's no heavy development around it. So there may or may not be a production deployment in terms of how that went, some training, some member onboarding, some communication and change management around that. From a product point of view, we're very transparent. We publish our pricing up on our public website. Typically, we look at an advanced installation package, it's about $7K. These are all USD prices. And then our suite pricing for up to 1,000 members is $13,380. Additional packs are another $1,800. So it's not like it's double if there's 2,000. It's a very small increment as you go beyond that. If you have a much smaller, you know, reach out to Logan. We could potentially have flexibility around that and look at what that looks like for smaller accounts through there. So just wrapping up, I've got a few more slides I'm going to go, but I want to sort of wrap up on what we've talked about so far. You know, we feel really strongly that Microsoft 365 is a great platform to manage your board and committees. And there's a lot of bespoke SaaS solutions around board and committee, and they tend to be their own environment, which means they're separate from what you do in 365. And you kind of work on stuff there and then copy it over here, and it's not ideal. I love the idea of a single version of the truth, that where you work and where you publish is one and the same. You know, there are a few other board and committee solutions that are based on Microsoft 365, so do your due diligence, look at that. But that was a big thing that brought Texas AFT to us. You know, we didn't know them. We'd been working with MBN previously on other engagements, so they knew us. But Texas AFT just did a Google search and said, "Hey, you have a board solution and it's on Microsoft 365. That's awesome. That's what we're looking for." So it fit well from that point of view. But then recognize that 365 is complex and it can overwhelm people. So our product makes that easy for everyone, not just the members, but the owners themselves as well. Now, there is a certain scale, like I mentioned, you know, 12-member board of directors, and that's your only board. You know, a $7,000 investment and then a $13,000 ongoing cost is a pretty penny to pay for 12 people. You maybe don't want to do that. But when you get into these larger associations, it doesn't have to be a big organization. Like MBNCanada is literally Meighan and Patty, it's 2 full-time employees. But they work with a lot of external people and there's a lot of scale there. It really works well from that point of view. And that delegation idea that Meighan mentioned, super important. You know, you don't want to be on tap to make every change through there. IT doesn't want to do that. Let the owners manage things. You know, whether those owners are within your organization, they're actually external to your organization. We support both those models. The last thing, security, super important as well. You know, I actually give talks at security conferences. It's part of my passion from that point of view. Keeping things in that 365 environment lets you do some super cool things from a security point of view. You know, maybe some of your boards and committees have highly sensitive content in them. There's the labeling that you can do in Microsoft 365. There's encryption so that if people download them, they can't just put them on a thumb drive and give them to random people. There's things that you can do, and that's part of the advantage of keeping it in the Microsoft 365 stack and not putting it in some other stack. Microsoft spends, I don't know, $1 billion a year on security. It's super important to them. They do it better than most from that point of view. So that works really well. If you want to try this out yourself, we've recently launched our test ride website. So you can actually come across to, I get the right browser here, portal.umdemo.com. You can actually try out the committee solution yourself. So you can come into the test ride solution here. If you come under document and sharing, you'll see the community scenario. You can say, hey, I want to join that. You first need to register on the site. So when you come into the join group, it's going to take you over the login. If you don't have an existing account on the site, it'll take you to a very simple, just need first name, last name, registration. I actually have an account already, so I'll just log in through that one. And it recognizes that I'm already in that test ride program. Let me just go over to that group. We've still got a few people showing up in there. We've got some tweaks we need to do there. You shouldn't actually see anybody else other than yourself in there, but stay tuned on that side. But the idea is go ahead and try this out, get a sense for that. If you're really keen and you want to go further from a committee owner point of view, then we can actually set up a separate committee site for you and make you a membership manager of that. You can actually own and manage it and experience that whole side of it. There was a question that just came through on the chat there, Logan. Yeah, these users are guests in the tenant. So when we're going to that login screen, optionally taking the registration, what we did there was just check in and say, hey, do you already have a guest account in our tenant? If not, register, we'll create that guest account and then continue in through the onboarding process from there. So go ahead and check that out. It's pretty cool. There's other areas you can explore in the test ride. There's stuff around the Power BI, around our learning management integrations to our partner product, LMS 365. So there's lots of different scenarios you can play with from that point of view. This is a part one of two-part series. So I mentioned we're going to be doing a second webinar January 31st. Same client, same portal, but really very focused on the secure data collection. So Meighan mentioned, they've got 36 service areas. They collect all this data. There's a data warehouse. They publish it out. That webinar presentation is very focused on that. So it's a very different topic than the boards and committees, but part of the same solution. So from a next steps point of view, mentioned we'll have the recording and the slides up on our event page. We'll send a follow-up email. We always include a Microsoft Forms poll. Please give us your feedback, including things that you didn't like, future topics you'd like to go into from there. That would be great. You can check out the test ride link there that I mentioned. And we actually have a link to the Office365.com Calendly side of things. If you want to schedule some time in there with Logan, others on our team to go into that scenario, by all means, reach out from that point of view. And that's my end of my presentation. So I want to thank everybody. Logan, I didn't keep a close eye on the chat there. Is there questions that we've missed that we want to circle back on?
No, there was the one question from Sam around the guest users, and actually Sam has another question around converting the existing users into guest users. So Sam, I can drop you a note right after.
Yeah, we absolutely have a plan of what that looks like and how we migrate those across. So we can get some details on that side.
For sure.
All right, well, we'll give you 7 minutes back to your lunch hour. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us, and by all means, join us in 2 weeks' time to hear more about the service data collection side of things. Thanks, everybody.